Hey class, this is Mr. Allen. Just wanted to make my first video of the year for you. Wanted to talk about the project, the house that Jack built. I thought we did a pretty good job with that project. We definitely are doing a great job for the most part with using comments and using methods. And so I think almost everyone used methods in a meaningful way, but I just wanted to show you a good example of the project. I actually took this someone might recognize this as their own project, but I wanted to show you a good example of a project as well as a good example of how to make sure to clean up the little bits of redundancy that was left from some of your projects. So in this project, you can see that the creator, the author, has basically in their main its only method calls, which is nice and clean. Doesn't have to be that way because you see they have like the spaces method right here that really is just one line of code. So they're not necessarily saving any code by having that method, but it certainly does look cleaner. Then what they do is they have different methods for the different lines, and a lot of you did this. So they did a method for each line, and then they came down and did methods for verses. You wouldn't necessarily need to do this. You could kind of do that as you go, but it definitely is a good way to break the problem down. So you break it down to its elements. The decomposition that I talked about in class, the poem is just a bunch of lines. And so if you break it down to its elements, then each line would be a method, and then each verse is a combination of lines. So this was, like I said, a really good example, but when I was going through it, I did see some redundancy in there in a couple of different places, but I think if you just look right here, I can highlight word killed 8 lay, word killed 8 lay, word killed 8 lay. So just there, with that being repeated, or even killed 8 lay. So I could make the argument a couple of different ways. I could make the argument that I see the pattern killed 8 lay 4 times. So that would be a good place for a method. So maybe let's do that. So let's add a method into this. Public static void. Let's call cleanup. And all we have to do then is call killed 8 lay in that method. And then everywhere we have killed 8 lay, we're going to replace that now with just cleanup. So killed 8 lay is just going to be cleanup. And then I'm going to copy that if when it participates and cooperates with me. Killed 8 lay, cleanup, killed 8 lay, cleanup, killed 8 lay, cleanup. So, I mean, you could argue that there's still a tiny bit more redundancy, but to some extent, you're never going to clean up all the redundancy, and you get to the argument then of like, if adding the lines of code kind of add more complexity to your program, is it really worth it? But I think in this case, this is just a nice way of getting rid of that residual redundancy. And in our case, it might seem obtuse at times, but we are going to try and get rid of as much redundancy as possible when we're learning how to program, because I think it is a helpful application in trying to figure out the best way to design your programs and make sure that also when you go to scale a program or to change it, that's the easiest possible experience.